It has finally stopped raining, and in today's video I'm going to be changing the oil in the differential. This beautiful machine has spent the last week inside because every day it's rained, but now that's changed, I can get this car back out on the driveway and work can recommence. In preparation for this job, I lowered the spare wheel down and removed it, and found this really corroded, sorry mess. You see, the previous owner had wrapped this spare wheel into a gravel bag, plastic bag, and the whole thing was wet, and it had held the water against this wheel, which only exacerbated the corrosion. Now there's also this plastic cover that the wheel sits into. This link piece hooks up to the spare wheel itself, so you can inflate the wheel without removing it via this little tyre valve here. And then ultimately the whole thing is held up with this rather rusty looking cradle. As you can see, getting this wheel out of the way gives vastly improved access to the differential. And when I lowered the spare wheel and removed it, I also took all of this toolkit out and the battery out and thoroughly hoovered and cleaned the boot floor and everything in here. It's all in very good condition actually. The only downside was that the battery retaining clamp down here snapped clean off in the floor, so we'll have to draw that out. In the meantime, I've got a tennis ball just down there, and that prevents the battery from moving. It's very effective, but clearly not permanent. Here you can see the battery securing clamp. It has snapped off right there. The differential is said to be maintenance free, and the oil is said to be there for the lifetime of the vehicle. Now, realistically, I don't think BMW would have intended the lifetime to be 25 years, so I'm going to change the fluid. I don't think gear oil can be good for 25 years. To improve accessibility, the vehicle is raised on the jack and secured with an axle stand. And here we can clearly see the differential right in front of us. Naturally, the vehicle will have to be lowered to the ground so it's on the level for it to be fully drained and also to refill to the correct level. But in terms of removal, it's good to have full accessibility like this. You will note the use of these spurious connectors here on the speed sensor there for the speedo. But as I mentioned in an earlier video, I have the correct connector block here, and this rewiring of that system will be in a future video very soon. So before we get underway, just a few things here. I've got a wire brush for cleaning up the diff before we even get started, so no dirty bits get into it through the openings. We've got a 14mm hex drain plug tool here, a receptacle to drain the fluid into, also a clear jug so we can actually look at the fluid and see if there are any contaminants, and various other bits. And gloves, because I don't want 25-year-old stinky hypoid gear oil over me. We need to make sure that both of these can be loosened, especially the filler plug, because if we drain it all out through here first and then realise that this is seized, well, it's a problem. So let's make sure both of these can come undone. Really got to make sure it's well seated, because that will improve the chances of it coming undone. We'll tap that home with a hammer. I'm using a 1/2 inch to 3/8 drive adapter, and that one is cracked off. Onto the drain plug. These are both cracked off now, and we are now in a position to loosen the drain plug and allow it to drain into this bowl here. Let's take a bit into the jug so we can have a look at it. We'll let that drain, and what I'll do in the meantime is lower the vehicle on the jack so it can fully drain. And with the vehicle back on level ground, there is more to drain out. I haven't taken this car out for a drive to get it hot, but it's a pretty damn hot day anyway. But nonetheless, there's no rush. I'm just going to let that drain until there's nothing left. And while that happens, I can talk to you about oils and drain plugs and other exciting things like that. There really are parts for this car everywhere in this garage. But back to these drain plugs. Now if you've got the original drain plugs and they're intact and you're going to reuse them, you can get these crush washers. And I've got 2 of them here because I initially thought that these drain plugs were fine. When I looked more closely, they both look quite scabby, so I thought, well, I'm not going to take a chance, so I got the replacement plugs. And when you buy a replacement plug, it comes with the O-ring seal built in. So the O-ring seal replaces the crush washer. That's the part number there for the plug, along with the built-in washer. And I will leave the part numbers for all of these in the description. On closer inspection and with a wire brush, these aren't actually that bad. So I'm now torn as to whether or not I use the original plugs with these, or whether I just go all out and use these new ones. I'm yet to decide. Okay, so this is what came out of it. I don't see any red flags here. No sort of grey particles, nothing shiny. I've seen diffs so bad that the oil comes out as a grey paste. A reasonable colour considering its age. My god, it stinks though. Gear oil really is the worst. Now in terms of what I'm going to refill this with, I spoke with the BMW dealer and they looked it up for me and they got their equivalent off the shelf and brought it over to me, and I saw 75W140 on that container of oil. So I've gone for this. Now there are so many theories on different oils on these. I'm sticking with this simply because it was looked up by BMW to my chassis number and that's what they came up with. Now the differentials on these cars are something of a dark art, and I've read all sorts and I really can't go definitive on this because I've just read so many different things. I know there are 3 types. There's the standard open differential, which is fitted on the lower powered 4-cylinder models. There is the Torsen limited slip differential, which is a kind of gear based limited slip arrangement, which the 6 cylinders are supposed to have. And then there's the clutch pack type limited slip diff, LSD, that the M cars apparently have. I've read in some places that the Torsen did in fact not come out until 99, and that any of the 6-cylinder ones before that had the clutch pack type, but I don't know if I believe that and I don't know if I can verify that. And it seems that short of taking off the actual rear cover, we're not going to know. So if anyone can go definitive on this and let me know in the comments, I'd be really interested to know. I did, out of interest, go into BMW today and I got a data sheet printed off, and it does come up as 0209, 0209, 25% differential. So we know it's got an LSD of some sort, but again, I can't go any further than that. So this is what I'm going to be filling it up with. I've read somewhere that the capacity is 1.4 litres, but that could be for the smaller diff on the lower powered models. But I've got 2 litres here, which should be ample. So before I do refill this, I just want to say a few quick words. A massive thank you to Vines BMW at Gatwick. The guys in the parts department there have been brilliant. I'm constantly phoning up for all sorts of little bits and pieces. It's probably quite annoying because they're not of massively high value, a lot of them, but they do always look up the stuff. They always manage to get hold of it. And I could go as far as to say that all the parts that you see here, and there are so many parts in this bags, I mean there's everything you can imagine. They are all things that I'm going to be fitting to this car and bringing videos to you about. Unfortunately, some of the bigger stuff, suspension, steering, brakes, I have had to buy from Autodoc. I know that there's just no chance of competing with those prices because they are so good. But I do buy as much as I can from the BMW dealer. Prices are very good. Availability is normally good, although we're struggling with a throttle cable right now, which has been back ordered for a while. And it's not actually my local dealer, to be honest. It's actually quite away from where I live, but it's worth the drive because they always look after me and they always seem to get it right. The dripping has finally stopped, and don't ask me why, but I opted to go for the original drain plug with the crush washers. I'm just nipping this up for the time being, more about torque settings in a minute. Now these containers do have quite a useful spout, so I'm hoping I can pour this in using this spout and not have to use a pump. Yes, it works. So we can safely squeeze a litre in here. I did actually measure how much came out, and it was 1.3 a litre. Now, because my driveway isn't completely level, it's actually slightly lower at the back, I'm going to have to take the car into the garage for the final refilling of the last bit. I know my garage is level. It's a little bit darker in here. I hope we can see this okay. Let's get the last bit in here. Hopefully we get about 0.3 or 0.4 of a litre in here now at this point. And there we go, it's just starting to flow out there now, so we've reached the level. And just snug that up for the moment. And finally back outside, the level was corrected on the flat, but now it's time to torque these plugs to the correct setting. Now, from what I've read, 65 Newton meters for the arrangement with the crush washer, which is what we've got, and it's reduced to 60 if you go with the newer type with the O-ring. The general consensus though is 45 Newton meters. From what I've read, people don't advise going any tighter for risk of stripping the threads on that aluminium casing, so I'm going to go with 45. That feels quite tight in itself anyway. I wouldn't want to go any tighter than that. So under here, it's job done. Until the next time when I sort out this sorry mess. That is really bugging me. I think you can tell because I've been going on about it in several of my videos. Okay, so it took 1.75 litres. I'm not quite sure why we only got 1.3 out and it took 1.75. There are no leaks, it's bone dry, so no idea. Anything could have happened after all these years. But it's set to the correct level now, and because I chose to reuse the original type plug with the crush washer, I've got two new ones with the O-rings built in, spare, should I ever do this again, which I'm sure I will. So that's it for this one. I'll see you again in another one very soon. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.